There are moments in life when everything seems quiet, too quiet. When your prayers feel unanswered, your plans seem delayed, and heaven itself appears silent. You look around, and nothing is moving. No progress, no signs, just stillness. But I want to tell you something today. God does His greatest work in silence. What you call delay, God calls preparation. What feels like abandonment is actually alignment. You may not see the evidence yet, but the silence of God is not the absence of God. It's the stage where His invisible hand begins to build what your faith has already claimed. There are seasons in life when everything feels still, so still that you begin to wonder if God has forgotten you. You pray and the heavens seem closed. You move forward and doors stay shut. You listen for a whisper, but only silence answers. And in that silence, doubt creeps in. You begin to question whether your faith has lost its power, whether your prayers are being heard, whether you somehow stepped outside of God's will. But what if the silence isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? God often hides His work in quietness, because that's where your faith is tested and transformed. The silent season is not a sign of God's absence. It's a divine strategy to strengthen your spirit. It's where God takes you out of the noise so He can reshape your inner world. Think about a seed buried in the soil. From the outside, it looks lifeless, forgotten, covered by dirt. But under that surface, the seed is cracking open, roots are forming, and new life is beginning. If you judge the seed by what you see on the surface, you'd think nothing is happening. But in reality, everything is happening. That's exactly what God is doing in your silence. When you don't see results, when nothing seems to move, when your plans are paused, that's when the invisible process is underway. The problem is, we live in a world addicted to noise and speed. We measure success by visible progress. We panic when things go quiet, but the kingdom of God doesn't operate on the world's clock. Heaven has its own timing, and silence is often the sound of divine activity. When God is silent, He's often working on the roots. Before He reveals the fruit, He strengthens the foundation. If He gave you the blessing too early, your character might not be ready to hold it. If He opened the door too soon, your faith might collapse under the weight of it. So He lets you wait. He allows silence to discipline your heart and refine your trust. You start to realize that your relationship with God can't depend on how much you feel Him. It must depend on how much you believe Him. It's easy to trust God when you can see His hand, but true maturity comes when you trust His heart, even when you can't trace His hand. When life gets quiet, that's when you discover what you truly believe. The silent season exposes whether your faith was built on feelings or on revelation. And in that quietness, something powerful happens. Your faith stops being emotional and becomes foundational. You stop chasing signs and start standing on promises. There's a story told of a silversmith who refines silver in fire. Someone once asked him how he knows when the silver is pure. He replied, "When I can see my reflection in it." That's what God is doing in your silence. He's refining you until His image is reflected in your character. He's burning away impatience, doubt, pride, and fear, because those things can't go where He's taking you. You see, the silence is not wasted. It's a workshop for your soul. While you're waiting, God is teaching you to depend on His timing, not your own. While you're wondering, He's proving that His plan is wiser than your understanding. While you're crying, He's reminding you that faith doesn't always shout. It sometimes just stands still. So if you find yourself in a silent season, don't rush it. Don't curse it. Don't try to escape it. Embrace it. Lean into it. Whisper in your heart, "God, I may not see it, but I trust that you're working." Because that's exactly what He's doing. The same God who was with you in the noise is still with you in the quiet. The same power that opened Red Seas can work in invisible ways behind closed doors. When you walk through a silent season, remember this. Silence is not empty. It's full of God's hidden activity. Every delay has a purpose. Every still moment has meaning. Every unanswered prayer is preparing you for an answer greater than what you asked for. The silence you feel today is setting the stage for a sound of victory tomorrow. So, breathe, relax. Don't mistake God's quietness for His absence. He hasn't left you. He's working deeply, perfectly, and precisely. The silent season is His strategy to strengthen your faith, purify your heart, and align your destiny. And when He finally breaks that silence, you'll understand that He wasn't withholding your blessing. He was perfecting it. There comes a moment in every person's life when you reach the end of your strength. You've tried everything, planned every step, forced every door, controlled every outcome, yet somehow things still fall apart. You pray, but you still worry. You believe, but you still try to fix everything yourself. And it's in that moment of exhaustion that God whispers, let go. Letting go isn't easy. It feels like losing control, like stepping off a cliff without knowing where you'll land. But here's the truth. Control was never yours to begin with. You were never meant to carry what only God can handle. Every time you hold on too tightly, you block the flow of divine movement. When you cling to your own understanding, you limit the way heaven can intervene. Letting go is not giving up. It's giving God permission to take over. Faith is not proven in how much you can hold on. It's proven in how much you can surrender. God doesn't need your panic. He needs your trust. When you release your grip, when you stop trying to figure everything out, you create space for miracles to happen. The human instinct says, do something. But faith says, stand still and watch what God will do. Think of a child learning to swim. The instructor tells them, relax, float, trust the water. But the more the child panics and fights, the faster they sink. The moment they release the tension and allow the water to carry them, they begin to float. That's exactly how life works with God. The more you try to control the outcome, the more you sink under the weight of worry. But when you relax into His promises and trust His direction, He lifts you up in ways your effort never could. Letting go requires humility. It means admitting that your wisdom has limits. It means saying, "Oh, God, I don't understand this, but I believe you do." It's the moment you stop wrestling with the problem and start resting in His presence. When you finally release control, peace comes rushing in. The kind of peace that doesn't make sense, but somehow keeps you steady. Many people pray for peace, but refuse to let go of control. You can't have both. Peace and control cannot coexist. You must choose one. The moment you surrender, peace flows like a river through your soul. Because when you stop managing outcomes, you start trusting the one who already knows how the story ends. Sometimes God allows frustration to increase so that surrender becomes the only option. He lets your plans fail, not to punish you, but to remind you that His ways are higher than yours. He'll allow doors to close that you were sure were meant for you. Not because He's withholding good things, but because He's redirecting you towards something greater. Every time you let go of what's wrong for you, you make room for what's right. Letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the recognition that divine timing always outperforms human striving. The more you trust, the more you realize that the things you were desperate to hold on to were never meant to stay. God removes what you think you need so He can replace it with what you truly need. That relationship, that opportunity, that plan. If it was meant for you, no power in the world could take it away. And if it's not meant for you, no amount of fighting can make it stay. Surrender doesn't mean you stop working or caring. It means you stop worrying. It means you do your part and then rest in the assurance that God will do His. When you've done all you can, when you've prayed and stood firm, the next act of faith is release. Because the hand that opens to let go is the same hand God fills with blessing. So if you find yourself weary today, tired of fighting battles that seem endless, maybe it's time to release it. Stop trying to control the narrative. Stop replaying what you can't change. Lift it up to God and say, I trust you with this. And when you do, something shifts in the atmosphere. The burden lifts, the heart lightens, and heaven begins to move. The power of letting go is that it activates the power of God. When you release control, you invite Him to take command. When you surrender your timeline, He aligns your destiny. What you let go of in faith, He multiplies in grace. There are seasons when life feels uncertain, when you can't see the purpose behind the pain, the reason behind the delay, or the lesson behind the loss. You look around and nothing makes sense. It feels like the pieces of your life are scattered, like the plan has fallen apart. But what if I told you that while you're staring at fragments, God is working on the full picture? What if I told you that behind the confusion, behind the silence, behind what looks like chaos, heaven is busy arranging things perfectly for your good? God never wastes a single moment. Not one tear, not one trial, not one detour is meaningless. Everything you're facing, every disappointment, every waiting season, every heartbreak is being woven into a masterpiece. You see the moment, but but God sees the whole timeline. You see the problem, but God sees the purpose. You see a closed door, but God sees protection. That's why He tells us to trust Him even when we don't understand, because He's not just reacting to life, He's orchestrating it. Sometimes God's greatest work is hidden from view, like a master craftsman working in the dark. He's shaping things in silence. You may not see movement, but that doesn't mean there isn't progress. Behind the scenes, He's shifting hearts, preparing opportunities, and aligning circumstances. What looks like stillness is actually strategy. You might think nothing is happening, but heaven's timeline is moving precisely on schedule. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, and forgotten in prison. From the outside, his story looked tragic, hopeless. But what Joseph didn't see was that God was aligning every detail for his destiny. Every pit prepared him for the palace. Every delay was positioning him for purpose. And when the moment finally came, Joseph could look back and say, "What you meant for evil, God turned for good." That's the power of divine orchestration, the ability of God to turn every broken piece into part of a perfect plan. You may be in a place today where you don't see how it's going to work out. Maybe the job didn't come through, the relationship ended, the door you prayed for stayed shut. You might feel forgotten, but you are not forsaken. God is working even when you can't feel it. His silence does not mean inactivity. He's the kind of God who moves quietly, yet powerfully. You might not see His hand, but you can trust His heart. In the background, God is arranging divine appointments. He's putting the right people in the right place at the right time. He's protecting you from what you thought you wanted and preparing you for what you truly need. Sometimes He delays you to develop you. Sometimes He closes one door to open one better. Sometimes He hides you because your season of visibility hasn't yet arrived. And when it does, you'll look back and thank Him for every no that led you to the right yes. The truth is, if God showed you everything He was doing right now, you'd be overwhelmed. You'd see the chain of miracles already set in motion, the conversations happening, the opportunities forming, the unseen hands working on your behalf. But faith doesn't demand a preview. Faith simply trusts the process. You may not know the route, but you know the guide. You may not see the way, but you know the one who makes a way where there is none. So, don't let the quiet fool you. Heaven is not asleep. Every second of your waiting is part of a divine schedule. The pieces that look random are the very parts that will fit perfectly when the time is right. God specializes in connecting the dots that don't make sense. He knows how to bring beauty out of ashes, strength out of struggle, and victory out of what looked like defeat. Right now, in the unseen realm, God is speaking your name into rooms you've never entered. He's preparing people to favor you, positioning blessings to meet you, and setting up breakthroughs to surprise you. The background of your life is the battleground of your faith, where you choose to either panic or trust. But if you can rest in His timing, you'll see that every waiting moment was worth it. So, my friend, as you walk out of this message today, remember this truth. Your faith is not proven in the noise, it's proven in the silence. The same God who spoke the universe into being with a word is the same God who can move mountains without a sound. You don't have to see everything to believe that something is happening. You don't have to understand everything to trust that it's working. Right now, in ways you cannot trace, God is aligning your future. He's taking every delay, every disappointment, every heartbreak, and weaving it into a plan so divine, so perfect, that one day you'll look back and say, "Now I understand why it had to happen that way." You'll realize that the season you thought was your breaking point was actually your building point. So, relax, breathe. You don't need to fight for what's already yours. You don't need to force what God has already promised. Let Him write your story in peace. Let Him fight the battles you can't see. Let Him work in silence, because that's where His power is most active. When you can't hear His voice, trust His character. When you can't see His hand, rest in His plan. And when it feels like nothing is moving, remind yourself that heaven is never still. There's a purpose in your pause, a blessing in your burden, and a miracle in your waiting. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are being prepared.